You're tuning in to Luminal on the Wall. Welcome. I'm your host, Becky, and joining me always is my co-host and beautiful sister, Bevy.
In our podcast, we will take a deep dive into the evil side of humanity. We will talk about suspicious deaths, shoddy investigations, and all the gory details in between.
But be warned, we will not hesitate to call BS when we hear it, which means you may not always agree with us, but we promise to lay out the evidence so you can come to your own conclusions based on what is presented.
Listeners' discretion is advised. Yeah, it's the only time we can make work.
Exactly. But I don't know why we do this to each other, because we are not morning people.
It's true. But we did have a sleepover.
Yeah, we did.
So we could make this happen. I feel good about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Had a nice cozy sleep at your house, Bev.
Nice.
It was good.
My cat shit on himself late last night, and I had to clean it up.
Yeah, we went to our brother's house for a night of Catan and
yes,
games.
We did.
And then we came back to Bev's house, and we're all fixing to get ready to bed. And I hear, ew!
I was like, don't let him on the bed, Craig.
Because he was covered in it, right?
Covered in diarrhea shit. It was awful.
Poor kitty.
Poor kitty.
But he's okay. He's okay today.
Yeah, he kind of still stinks. We'll have to maybe give him a smelly cat. What are they feeding you? Oh, that takes a dark turn knowing that he like shit on himself. I kind of felt like a supervillain when I laughed like that.
You did. I think the mornings make you more villainous. How lovely.
On that note,
let's get into it, Bev.
All right. Sounds good. Let's get going, sister.
All right. Our story takes us to Boulder, Colorado, where a woman named Deborah DePinto lives. Debbie was known as a kind and loving woman, and in 1988, she met Scott Jones at a party. The two started talking and exchanged information, and it wasn't long until the couple started dating. The couple had been together well over a decade. Although their on and off again relationship was up and down, it did produce 2 children.
Nice.
A baby boy and a baby girl. Now, Beth, there's not much backstory for this couple. I couldn't find much. So, leading up to 2018, they're on the rocks.
Okay.
Their relationship.
They're in trouble.
Yeah. Deborah decided that she no longer wanted to be in a relationship with Scott. She had moved out, found herself her own trailer to live in, and at the time, their children were then 11 and 13.
Okay.
Scott was absolutely heartbroken, and at that time, he still held out hope that one day his family would be together again, because it had happened so many times.
Right.
However, Debbie was serious this time.
Yeah, she was set on not being with him.
Exactly. Now, at the time, Debbie worked as a waitress at a local restaurant, and she was said to be an amazing waitress. She was a hard worker, and all her coworkers and customers absolutely loved her.
I appreciate that.
She could.
We all know how good, like, having a good waitress or waiter is.
Changes your dining experience, right?
She totally changes it.
Exactly.
All right. So she's great at what she does.
Yeah, she is.
I love that.
Now, jumping forward to June 18th, 2018, there was a 911 call made. It was Scott and his son. They were calling because Debbie had passed out and fell on the floor. She was foaming at the mouth and became unresponsive.
Whoa.
So you can imagine their panic at that time.
Of course.
Debbie and Scott apparently had been in the laundry room, which was part of a utility building at the trailer park she lived in.
Okay, so they were at her house.
Yes.
Okay.
Debbie's son called 911 and initially requested paramedics. He didn't know the address, so he actually passed the phone to his father, who was absolutely frantic. He was able to spit out the address and very, very vaguely tell them that his wife was unresponsive.
Right.
However, on that phone call, Scott is heard pleading over and over again, "Please help me. She's not breathing. Please, please, please help me."
To the 911 operators?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he is, like I said, he's just panicking.
Yeah, like he cares for her, obviously.
Yeah, she's laying on the ground unresponsive. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I would want help too.
So, because of the 911 call, obviously police and paramedics were dispatched to the residence.
Of course.
The first person on scene was Deputy Mike Toure. When he arrived at the trailer park, he went into the utility building and he found an unresponsive woman laying on her back. He also saw Scott Jones and their son kneeling beside her. When he walks into the back room, the officer's body camera captures Scott saying over and over, "Please don't die, please don't die." And he starts begging the officer to help him. Scott is displaying similar energy to the 911 call. Frantic, panic, all that stuff.
Right.
At that point, the deputy starts CPR, and he continues working on her until the paramedics get there.
A little side note, I can understand now why CPR is so important in having first aid and everything. Because in those situations, the last thing you want to do is have to wait until help arrives, right? It would be so nice to be able to begin CPR right away.
Oh, absolutely. It's and that right there is the difference of saving someone's life or not.
Yeah.
Like that extra 5 minutes.
Totally.
That can be the difference, unfortunately.
Yeah. Remember when Axel had to do CPR for someone who ended up getting murdered? Axel saw this guy get stabbed.
Had to pull over
in his work vehicle at the time.
Yeah.
And do CPR for this guy who just got stabbed.
Yeah. That would be so crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I've been doing CPR classes for 12 years.
Yeah.
Every year I renew. Never had to use it once.
That's crazy.
I'm not upset about that.
No, of course, but
I'm glad I have it.
Totally. You want to be prepared in like that type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have this officer who's doing CPR.
Mm-hmm.
They're waiting for paramedics.
Yep. And they arrive shortly after.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So as the paramedics start working on Deborah, Scott is caught on camera saying, "You've got to save her. She's my life. She's my life. You've got to save her." And at that point, the police are trying to get Scott to just calm down a little bit so that they can really find out what happened to her and what course of action they need to take.
Right.
So this is where things get a little janky, Bev. Okay? Because Scott tells the police that it was really hot in the laundry room. She was finding it hard to breathe. She kind of just grabbed at her neck and then just collapsed. Which, okay, maybe, heart attack, stroke.
Yeah, of course. That's obviously what your first instinct is, hearing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before they get any other information, Scott kind of regresses and he is still in a panic. The paramedics are still working on Debbie, but Scott is now yelling, being frantic again. He's talking about how she's his whole world. She's his snowflake, stuff like that. Just saying kind of odd stuff.
Yeah, it seems a little bit extreme.
Yeah, like exaggerated.
Yeah.
But again, we never know how people are going to react in those scenarios, so maybe this is normal.
Maybe it's normal, but it does seem a little bit, just a little
overkill.
Odd. Overkill. Ooh.
You get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying.
He also then mentions to the police officer, she's a 220-pound woman. I told her she has to take care.
Ooh.
As a bystander, that would make me think that her health may be in question. But he doesn't directly say that there is anything wrong with her. He just says that.
It's just weird because when you do hear him say that, it almost makes you think he is trying to create a narrative in the officers' minds and kind of lead them to a conclusion, right away. Like, it could be innocent, but it just seems out of place, and like he's really trying to lead the officers to a conclusion.
Well, exactly right.
Yeah, so
then the sergeant thought that was also kind of like, it kind of just stuck out to him like, oh, that's odd.
It's just weird.
And so they continue on kind of asking questions because he's just going off on these tangents and frantic and kind of not making sense. Anyways.
They want a clear and concise story as to what the hell happened.
Exactly. So the sergeant does ask the question, has she smoked anything? Is she a smoker at all or anything else?
Yeah, is she on drugs at all?
Yeah.
Is she having an overdose?
Yeah, obviously that's a different course of action.
Right.
So what Scott replied with was kind of weird, like a little dismissive, but again, leading a bit. And he says, I don't know, she smokes that damn pipe where they heat up the end of the stick and stick it in that stuff.
Oh.
So the sergeant says, well, a bunch of people smoke that. Could it be heroin? And Scott says, I don't know. I don't think so. I just don't know, man. So the officers are kind of thinking, like, you've been with this woman well over a decade.
No kidding.
You don't know either what drugs she's doing or if she for sure is doing drugs.
Yeah, you would think that he would know that. That's just weird.
And you'd also think that he would have been like, oh, she was acting like all psychotic or, you know, reacting weird to the drugs, you know?
Yeah, something or other. If she was on heroin before, you would know she was like high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at this point, the detectives and officers that are there are kind of sitting back being like, something's just off with this.
Right.
This is not normal for this circumstance.
Yeah.
You know?
It's given them off vibes.
Exactly. So as you said, that he's kind of trying to manipulate the narrative.
Yeah.
Detectives feel that way as well.
Right. Okay. Have they, like, so right now he hasn't given them any other explanation as to what happened other than she is unhealthy and she smokes a pipe with some liquid stuff or whatever. That's the two things he said at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's, again, nothing conclusive. It's just like possibilities.
Yeah.
Now, some might think that this is a really worried husband. Like, I don't know, man, maybe she did drugs. Maybe she's having a heart attack. Stuff like that. Trying to give as many options as possible. But the police just feel like he's guiding them.
Yeah.
And trying to get them to think what he wants them to think. So at this point, paramedics are still working on her. Scott then, you know, says some more weird stuff. And he's like, oh, someone should be holding her hand. Someone should be consoling her. And the detectives are like, oh, no, we're actually like trying to save her life and take all measures so that we hopefully have a positive outcome. Like, that's our last priority.
That's weird.
So, like, chill out, kind of. I mean, they don't say that, but they're probably thinking.
The weirdest thought just came through my mind.
Yeah.
And it would be, if you had any prior knowledge that she might die, maybe in her last moments, you would want someone holding her hand. Like, say if you did have conflicting feelings about it, like, let's theorize for a sec.
Yes.
If Scott actually was the one to somehow do something to have her killed, right? And she's currently dying, and he knows that. And he does also love her, or has loved her, and cares for her. Maybe in those moments, instead of applying like CPR and first aid, he's more concerned with her last moments on this earth being like having someone holding her hand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like just being there, like, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
I love you.
So, it's an interesting theory. I mean, it could be totally off base. I have no idea, but oddly enough, that is what went through my mind in this moment.
I love that you thought that because I did not.
Interesting.
Or it just didn't pop through my brain.
Apparently words don't either. No, I'm just kidding.
So also, Bev, at the scene, there are Deborah and Scott's 2 children. I shouldn't say at the scene, at home that day. They're both there.
Okay. I'm glad they're not at the scene. If that's the case, that would be freaking traumatizing.
Well, yeah, it really would. Well, her son was there.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so both her children were home that day. Debbie was actually getting them ready to be dropped off at the airport to go on a vacation with her parents.
Oh.
So that's what they were planning for and just about to do before Debbie collapsed.
Oh.
So we know her son was there when the police arrived, but where was their daughter? She was nowhere to be found. And what strikes the detectives as weird and concerning is they say that the majority of the time when there's children in that scenario, the other parent is consoling their children and they're like their first priority.
Right, of course, yeah.
But Scott is not paying any attention to his son. And he literally is just watching
his mom
die, basically.
Yeah.
So he's not doing anything. And detectives, that kind of put up a little red flag, was like, why is he not like
consoling them
his
at
son,
all?
right?
No kidding. Because even when you were saying his son was in the room, I'm like, oh my God, that's so sad.
Yeah.
You'd want to almost protect your son or your kids from seeing whatever, because you know it's going to be hard for them, right?
Well, exactly. And you know what? Anytime, like I've watched CPR on people, and it is not like a fun thing to watch.
Well, yeah. And like, if you think about how hard you actually have to go for CPR, especially in a life or death situation, like you're not just like, boom, like tiny little taps. Like you're really trying to get them to breathe.
Yeah, 2 inches deep.
Yeah. So that's what she said.
Oh, no.
God.
I cringed as soon as I said that, but that's like the rule for CPR.
No. Oh my God.
Anyways, so you would also think that Scott would take his son maybe out of the room so he does not have to witness the CPR,
Yeah.
right? And on top of it, Bev, Scott has he does not even know where his daughter is in this moment.
Which is wild.
Yeah. Like, maybe I should tell my daughter her mom's dead, pretty much, or almost dead.
I mean,
or something's wrong.
I understand he doesn't know where she is, and that's weird, but at the same time, it's a pretty traumatic situation. Even for the parent involved, it would be like, you know, your person is like dying. I mean, listen, that to me, it could be weird, but I don't think it's the weirdest thing I've heard so far.
It could be explained, like, who knows where she is.
She was at the house, and they're like panicked about the situation right here, so they're just like,
yeah, in the moment.
Yeah.
Everything that's going on, detectives are also trying to survey the scene. Is anything off? Is anything tussled? You know?
Right.
But it virtually shows that there has been no indication that there was like foul play. It just looks normal. Nothing looks out of place. Also, Debbie does not show any immediate signs of violence. At that point, paramedics rush Deborah to the hospital. She's rushed into the emergency room where there are countless efforts to revive her and save her life. But unfortunately, they all fail. Debbie is pronounced dead. She was only 44 at the time.
Devastating.
Absolutely devastating. Now, Bev, they find out from the medical professionals that Debbie actually died of asphyxiation.
What?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is a sad event for the family, but the detectives have so many questions now. They also have a really strong burning intuition that something's not right, and they need to speak with Scott, because how he said she died, or like grabbed her throat, fell to the floor, collapsed, may or may not be in line with asphyxiation.
Right.
But she wasn't choking, so how did that happen?
Yeah.
So Bev, obviously Scott is asked down to the station so that they can get a clear understanding of what happened that day. The detectives also really want to sit down and kind of gauge, who is Scott? Is this his normal behavior that they saw? Like, is he that kind of just an erratic personality?
Yeah. Was it out of character for him, or did it fall in line with his personality? Because that would point them in different directions depending on the answer, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, the initial interview, Scott assured investigators that even though him and Deborah had been separated,
On the outs.
that they were still maintaining a healthy relationship and co-parenting well. He said they truly loved each other, and when Deborah collapsed, Scott told investigators they had been discussing what the family was going to have for dinner that night. Then all of a sudden she grabbed her throat and collapsed face down.
But I thought the kids are going on a plane.
They were.
But would they be there for dinner is the question.
Right? And without the kids, would Scott be there for dinner?
Yeah, because they're
Doubt
separated.
it. So this whole story sounds pretty innocent and unfortunate. By the end of the interview, Scott asks if he can go home. He's tired. His kids must be tired. So the detectives actually let him out of the interrogation room to go and just be with his children. However, before Scott can leave the police station with his kids, the police get some interesting evidence. In fact, it is a video from the manager of the trailer park from inside and outside the laundry facility.
Yes.
Whole video, Bev.
Yes. Oh my God.
This video, it's about an hour long too.
whoa, Becky, what the fuck happened? This is wild. I just gotta say, it is insanely satisfying when you get a video of a crime. There is no more guessing. There are no more stories. You get to know what happened.
Oh, exactly, right? So the manager of the trailer park says, I think you guys should watch this.
Ooh, there's some sketchy shit on there.
Some details that they will find out. And Bev, I can assure you, what it shows does not match up with Scott's story.
Oh my gosh. Lay it on me, sister.
Around 6:50 that evening, they saw Deborah and Scott's daughter actually go sit in their car. Why? I'm not sure if she was just waiting for her mom or just hanging out. I went and sat in cars at times too.
I used to drive our van. Me and Emily would go in there and pretend to drive it. And we were having fun. It was off, but we played in the van.
Yeah, and like you have your girl talk, like you're getting a Starbucks.
Yeah, no kidding.
Exactly. So who knows really why she was in there? I don't.
Okay.
Then, just shortly after she gets in the car, like seconds, it shows Deborah and Scott walking into the laundry building where, unbeknownst to them, there was this hidden camera. It was installed because there had been some damage and theft prior to this event. So the manager's like, I'm going to catch those little shits that are doing this.
I love how you almost said fuckers.
Yeah.
But you were like, maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the best thing to say.
And Bev, these two, they were not talking about what's for dinner. They were fighting. They walked into the utility room and then just slightly off screen to the laundry room. You don't actually get to see everything.
But you hear it.
Yeah, once the police clear up the audio and clean it up, you can hear everything.
Oh my God.
Okay, Bevy, you're going to read it with me.
Okay.
You are going to be Debbie and I'm going to be Scott.
Okay. All right, so I'll start. You're in my way.
Fuck, here.
Trying to get a towel.
I'm trying to love you.
Whatever. Get away from me.
Get away from me? Fucking whore. Fucking bitch. Now, Bev, this goes on for 3 to 4 minutes, and you can clearly tell it's escalating. Scott is calling her evil. She's telling him she's done and that she can't do it anymore, and they're never going to get back together.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so then we're going to carry on with some dialogue. So, Bev, continue on.
Okay. Scott, don't touch me.
Stop.
You can't force me to love you anymore.
I'm not forcing you.
Get out of the fucking way of this door. I'm trapped with you. Get away from me.
You make me feel terrible. Get away from the door. Fuck. Physical altercation goes on for about 90 seconds. Then you hear Scott say, "You're done."
Help me. Help me. Help. Help. Please let go of me, please.
Then there's some muffled sounds like something's going over Debbie's mouth. There's also a light thumping that was heard, and it slows down and then eventually stops. There was a bit of silence, and then all of a sudden, the dryer turned on.
Oh my gosh.
At that point, you can hear Scott heavy breathing. It's sounding like he's pacing back and forth. And then he spends about 47 minutes with Debbie before he comes out into the view of the camera.
Oh my God.
So obviously you can't see what happened, but when you hear all that,
it's
you know
tells
something
a dark
bad.
tale.
Exactly.
And I do have to say, I feel so bad for her getting called a fucking bitch and a fucking whore. That upsets me. Like, that's so abusive and so disgusting. And like, that's just someone
Nasty
being
individual.
It's so emotionally abusive and verbally abusive. Like, how could that make anyone feel good? You're obviously trying to make her feel like crap about herself. Like, fuck.
Yeah, and also if you're trying to get her back, that is not the way to do it.
Well, it's the way to do it if you're trying to coerce her into getting back with you, because you could like make her feel so low about herself that maybe she just kind of accepts you. So obviously he fucking killed her.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh my God.
So, also, another point to make is when he calls 911, you know she's already dead after this. No one can come back after 47 minutes.
No fucking kidding. That also, thinking back to my comment earlier about why he wanted someone to hold her hand, like, in his sick and twisted mind, he loved her. He obviously didn't want her to leave. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, so he was like, yeah, hold her hand. Why is no one doing this? Because he knows she's dead.
Yeah, he knows what they don't know, right?
Damn.
So, Bev, at this point, the detectives are like, that's a little different than when he told us. Let's show him this video. They want to gauge his reaction.
Right.
So, once the video is done, Scott says to the detectives, it doesn't prove anything, and you know that. Obviously, the detectives are, like, appalled with that, like, heartless.
No kidding.
They say to him, it shows us that something happened in that room, though. And so they get him to sit down and say, what happened? Why were you in there so long? And Scott says, I just don't know, man. Like, he's so casual and nonchalant, like, I have no idea.
He doesn't want to give any incriminating evidence because he's like, one, you didn't see anything could have happened.
Yep.
So it's like no concrete evidence that he committed the act. Well, like, in our minds, yeah, there's concrete evidence. Like, we know what he did, right?
But they don't know. Like, there's still a little room for wonder.
Yeah, or like reasonable doubt, as it were, right? So he's not trying to give any more
information than they have.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for finishing my sentence.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're my better half.
Oh. All right, Bev. So what's also kind of eerie is in the video, when he actually comes out of the laundry room, you can tell that he's like panicking. He's like, oh my God, like, what have I just done?
Right.
And he is talking to himself and he's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then he eventually leaves the building. The outdoor camera shows him walk over to the home, the trailer.
Get his son.
Fuck you, Scott. Brings him back. And as they're coming back into the utility room, again, seen on camera, Scott is saying to his son, she's gone, man. She's gone. Oh my God. Oh my God. And then the most heartbreaking part of this all is you hear Deborah's son whimpering, Mama, Mama.
Oh, God,
Mama,
Becky.
please wake up. Mama, please.
No.
He is desperate. He loves his mom.
What a piece of shit.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but like, you killed his mother and you're going to go get him. He's like, I need this guy as like proof that like something wild happened. Da da da. Like, I feel so sad for that little boy.
Oh,
what a crappy dad. What a crappy husband. Like, what a crappy person. I'm so sad for that boy, Becky.
I know. That's heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
His pleas were heart-wrenching to listen to. So, Bev, just like you, the detectives believe that he brought his son in to see his mom so that he could validate the story he was going to tell detectives.
Of course, which is just so self-serving and disgusting. I just can't handle it.
Exactly. So once in there, Scott gets his son to call 911.
Ugh.
He tells the operators his mom is purple and cool to the touch, and she has a bruise on the bridge of her nose. And like we said earlier, the young boy doesn't know the address, so after that, the phone call's passed on to Scott, where he takes over.
What a coward, Becky.
I know, can't even call 911.
What a fucking coward.
So as we know, eventually the police show up and they start CPR, and then the paramedics take over. While that's going on, Deborah's son is trying to find his sister. So not Scott, but his son is trying to find the sister. And he's using his dad's phone to send her text messages. And it's asking where she is and text her that mom's dead. So when the daughter ended up speaking with detectives, she said when she got that text that she was so scared because she thought, if mom's dead, what's going to happen to me? Am I next? What? So she stayed in the car the whole time. She didn't know what was going on, but I could imagine if her mom died like within 100 feet of her, she probably has no idea what happened and is so fearful. So after Scott viewed the video now, Bev,
yeah,
he doesn't give them any answers. As we know, he's kind of like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He asks the detectives, where do I go from here, man? I need a lawyer now, don't I?
Yeah.
So at that point, the police, they have enough evidence. They put him in handcuffs.
Good.
And he's not answering any more of their questions. So they're like, yep, okay, let's go charge him with this murder. Scott panics as soon as those handcuffs go on him. He says, whoa. There's no hurry. Let's talk about our options. let's discuss this. So the detectives basically are like, either you're getting arrested or you got to give us more information.
Right.
Right? Like,
yeah, of course.
Because otherwise you're just sitting here in silence.
So we're going to use the evidence that we do have, the audio of you murdering your wife.
Yes.
Against you.
Yeah, he's sitting there and he tells investigators he did not think anything through. He says, I didn't think about anything. I just reacted. I don't know what the fuck happened. Like a fucking asshole, I just reacted. I don't know. I don't know, man. Now, in one of the documentaries I watched about this, a psychologist chimed in and they said, this wasn't a man who just snapped, but a man who continually showed bad behavior and poor judgment throughout his life and relationship. And instead of dealing with his own emotions and processing the end of his relationship, he took his frustrations out on Deborah when he wasn't getting his way.
Yeah, like the mentality of a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's kind of trying to play it off like, oh, I just kind of snapped. I was pushed to my limits. But he made a calculated decision, and his poor behavior in the past shows that he's just a nasty individual. This is what he did when he didn't get his way, like I said.
Of course. And I just feel like this is so sad because, as I mentioned earlier, just his whole demeanor in that conversation that we did back and forth, he is being abusive. And as I know from Dr. Phil and Robin McGraw, that the most scary time for a victim of abuse, even if it's like verbal, emotional abuse, is when they're trying to leave a relationship, like for good, and end it, like be very stern about it. Like, no,
like
it is over, right? And true to that, it was for her.
It seriously was. So, Bev, getting deeper into the second interview conversation, whatever you want to call it, the tone kind of changed. So before it was like, we're loving, we co-parent well together.
Yeah.
We're still a good family dynamic.
Bullshit.
The tone clearly was different. So what Scott told investigators is that Deborah told him that he wasn't good enough, which, I mean, clearly he wasn't.
Yeah.
But that's what she would tell him. And she told him that she was taking the kids. He said she would threaten him with the kids and dick him around all the time. He said she couldn't stop being a monster, that she was so cruel.
I hate that.
I know. He also was like...
The abuse continues.
Exactly.
Even after her death. I hate that.
Yeah, it's just a completely opposite narrative of
it's like a victim mentality about it all.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a victim, so that's why I did what I did.
Like, is she a monster, or maybe you not kind to her?
Yeah, she's just standing up for herself.
Take some responsibility for your actions, dude.
Exactly. And one of the quotes that I'm going to use that he told detectives, he says, you don't know what she done to me. It will make a man temporarily insane. With all the pain she caused and what she did to my son, you will never understand. But what did she do to their son? That he never said.
He's still trying to paint her as this horrible human. Yeah. Like, he's literally trying to justify why he murdered her.
Exactly.
I hate that. I hate that. There's no excuse for doing that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like
zero.
Leave. Get help from another party, like the police or whatever. Don't kill her. Mm-hmm. That's wild.
Exactly. At this point, Bev, detectives felt that Scott kind of had the mindset that if he couldn't have her, no one could.
Exactly.
Now, prior to Debbie being murdered, she and Scott had been living separately, and Deborah was actually starting to see new people. Oh. She was dating other men, and this apparently made Scott really angry.
Right. Because he's losing her. He's losing that control and like that
grasp on her.
Yeah,
right?
So that's what makes him wild.
Mm-hmm. So as the state started building a case against Scott and they started looking into their background a bit more, they spoke with friends and family of the couple, and they started to see a much more clear picture of the dynamic of that relationship.
Abusive?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
And I think we, even just with the little tidbits and videos that we read and the narrative in that,
it was so clear.
We can see that already. Yeah. So were they surprised? No, they weren't.
Yeah, no kidding.
But they were just able to really see who he was.
Good.
They noticed from all the stories that Scott seemed to be extremely mentally controlling and manipulative over the years. There was discussions about physical abuse in the relationship. Although no one had ever seen it happen, many had heard tales from Debbie.
Yeah,
of what was going on.
It just, that one little snippet in the laundry room of that argument, you can absolutely tell that was what was going on. Which is so sad.
Now, some of the texts that investigators had found from Debbie's phone that she had received from Scott showed just like how nasty of a person he was. Mm-hmm. He texts her, "You're rotten to the core. Ain't no cop or restraining order gonna stop what's coming. I don't care what happened to me at all. I am a man with nothing left to lose except my life." At times, she also received a barrage of texts telling her she was cheating on him, that she was a bad mother, and that he was going to keep the kids from her.
Oh, so it's the opposite of what he said.
Literally the opposite.
I feel for her because so many abused women suffer in silence. I just feel sad for her. I really do. She was trying to get away.
She got the strength. She was becoming more independent, and it was just too much for Scott. And I guess it was just waiting for that ball to drop.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And in our previous podcast, Slovakian Stalker, remember we had talked about some of the statements that were key indicators of bad things are coming. We see those very prevalent in this case too. He's saying I don't care if my life ends. I have nothing else to live for. So you're coming down with me, basically. He's threatening her, all of those things,
I hear you. That's a very good point. Now, Bev, December 20th, 2019, Scott Jones was convicted of his wife's second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to the maximum penalty of 48 years in prison.
Thank God.
Now, on an even more kind of kick in the nuts to him, haha, one of those years was for child abuse. Because he took his son to see his mother's body, the court found that completely
disgusting.
Yes.
As we did.
Yeah.
It's appalling.
Exactly. And they tacked on just one more year.
Yes.
Just to be you're dead wrong, man.
I love that.
Me too. I know. I read that. I was like, yeah, you got him.
Justice system. Thank God.
Now, the sad thing is, unfortunately, these children are left with no
one.
parents, right?
That is
and
sad.
I think besides Debbie losing her life, that is almost equal level of travesty.
Yeah.
So once Scott was found guilty, their children were placed in custody of Boulder's Health and Human Service Department.
Oh, what about the grandparents? No?
I couldn't find anything. I know they stayed with family during the court proceedings, but that's all I could find. I also couldn't find if later they were switched back to custody of family. I'm really not sure. Now, Bev, in all of this and talking to their friends and family, they were able to see that Debbie was truly loved by her friends and family. She had so many people that supported her, and they all said the same thing. She was so loving. She was a kind woman. She worked hard for her family and would put her family above everything. She was the most amazing mother to her children, and it's just such a tragedy that she was taken off this earth too early.
And taken from them way too soon.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, I hate these cases because it's someone who is controlling, manipulative, and they think that because of how they're feeling, they can just end someone's life. It's the worst. So, I can assume he's up for appeal at some time, but, based on that freaking video,
no way.
No freaking way.
No freaking way in hell.
Yeah, I hope this man dies in prison.
Yeah, same.
I'm not hoping he dies.
I'm just happy he got consequences for his crappy behavior.
Seriously, right?
I'm so happy because, throughout this whole thing, he felt justified in everything and the way he treated Debbie, right? He felt justified. He tried to convince the cops that he was justified because she was a bad person, what have you.
And that he was the victim.
And I'm so happy that the courts finally laid some consequences on his ass.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. In that video, they got so lucky because other than that, it could have been up in the air.
Yeah.
But what I would have given to been a fly on the wall when they pulled Scott's ass back into that interrogation room and be
gosh.
Hey, watch this video.
Yeah.
And he'd probably be like,
holy shit. He had no idea. Thought he was in the clear. Like,
I'm so smart. They believe me.
Ha,
They
ha,
have no
ha.
proof.
ugh.
Probably turned him into a babbling brook. Like, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it did. I don't know.
I just don't know.
I just don't know.
I have no other words. Well, Bev, that's all I got for you today.
Well, it's a sad tale of abuse. And I just want to end this by saying, like, if you are being abused, reach out to somebody. Try and get help, especially if you're planning on leaving an abusive situation.
Make a plan.
Make a plan, seek help, because it is the most dangerous time for victims
Absolutely.
of abuse is when they're leaving a relationship. So just thought I'd say that. And thanks for sharing.
Thanks for listening.